With the recent release of the Star Fox Remake on Switch 2, people are now starting to get a little worried for the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. There's a lot of good reason to compare both of these games. They're both Nintendo 64 remakes being remade for a second time after already being remade once on the 3DS, and they're both coming out within the time span of 6 months in the same year, which is kind of crazy. And with Star Fox just releasing, a lot of people are looking at it and thinking whatever this game is doing is exactly what we're going to get for the Ocarina of Time remake, which could very well be the case and tell us exactly what to expect from the finished game. And as someone who's already played through the main game and seen all there is to offer with all the alternate routes in every stage, I now can compare these games in a better way. So to make things short, a lot of people really like the Star Fox remake, but the biggest point against it right now for a lot of people seems to be is that it's an exact one-to-one replica, just with way better graphics. In fact, right now I'm in the middle of making a big comparison video with all three of the Star Fox 64 games, and so far, from everything that I've seen, there are some pretty cool graphical and environmental changes to make the game look even better, but these layouts and enemy patterns and even exact boss attacks are exactly the same. And this is why a lot of people are thinking, well, we can probably expect the exact same thing from the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. It's going to be an exact one-for-one copy, but just looking a lot better. This could very well be the case, but I want to give a little bit of reason as to why I think both are completely possible. And I'm going to explain both sides of how I think this could go and the reasoning behind it. But before I dive into that, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Zelda, Star Fox, and Nintendo in general. We are still getting super close to our goal of 400,000 subscribers. You guys can make that happen super soon by leaving a like and subscribing on this video. Let's see how many people we can get to subscribe on this video alone. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's dive into what the Ocarina of Time remake is actually going to be like. Let me make it clear if it isn't already. We have hardly seen nothing of Ocarina of Time so far. I mean, we've literally just seen Link sleeping, so it's really hard to make predictions right now, so do not take anything I say here as confirmation. This is us trying to predict what the heck Nintendo is going to do based off of a recent game in a similar boat. But the first approach I want to look at is what if this is a one-to-one recreation of the original game once again. Once again, this is in the same boat as Star Fox. Ocarina of Time got remade on the 3DS, and it's also re-releasing on Switch 2 in the same time period, originating from the 64 era. Now, we have no clue who's working on the Ocarina of Time remake. Odds are it's a completely different team than Velan Studios, the one working on Star Fox, or has already worked on Star Fox. Star Fox has shot for a very realistic looking art style, even taking the familiar faces we know and love and making them pretty much real talking animals and fighter ships. So yeah, it looks like Zelda's actually doing the same thing. This is probably one of the more realistic looking Zeldas we've gotten so far, or at least realistic looking Links in the bed, because once again, that's all we got. Now, once again, if you consider what Star Fox is doing, this would still fall in the same category. You're having changes to the graphics and to certain assets of certain parts of the level, but that doesn't mean anything. I've seen Nintendo completely change some areas in Star Fox. Take Sector X for an example. This area looks completely different than the original, but plays exactly the same. The same enemy layouts, the same paths, the same boss battle, everything stayed the same, just the graphics took an extreme overhaul. Maybe we're experiencing this in Zelda, where each area looks vastly different, but it's the exact same stage layout and enemy placement and all of that stuff. Now, I still see people commenting that they love this one-to-one comparison with Star Fox. They think it's great that the game stayed exactly the same and just upped the graphics, and I can see why a lot of veterans would want that. But in my opinion, as somebody who already played the original game multiple times and played the 3DS remake multiple times, seeing it for a third time does feel a little exhaustive, and I kind of would want something more expansive, especially if the original devs had better ideas for the game like they did for Ocarina of Time. There was a lot cut from Ocarina of Time, like certain enemy and boss designs, the light and ice temples, and a couple of other extra things. This is Nintendo's probably one and only time to make those once dreamt up ideas an actual reality. So I want to look at the other side now. What if this isn't like Star Fox, and instead not only does it look amazing, but it's also changed up? Not too much. It's still Ocarina of Time. The dungeon layout is probably still exactly the same, and a lot of the things that we know and remember are going to stay the same, but a lot added to it as well. I think that's what I am missing the most with Star Fox right now. I wish some of the planets and paths added some things, like some of the missions were changed up a bit. Some of them are just too short and too bland in today's age. It'd be like running across that giant empty, open Hyrule field with nothing in it all over again. I don't think something like that would sit in today's day, even with it being a remake and us knowing it comes from the 64. I feel like Nintendo's going to need to put in more effort, and I'm still leaning on the fact that I think this is going to be different than Star Fox. For one, Zelda is just naturally way different than Star Fox. You spend most of your time running and interacting with everything in these levels, whereas Star Fox is simple on-rail or open range sections where you're flying quickly through things. This isn't Star Fox Assault. You never land on the ground and have dedicated foot missions or anything like that where they could drastically change anything. These missions are structurally made for it to be automatic on-rail sections for the most part of the game. Sure, they could have added more missions and they could have also added more branching paths and stuff to these missions, but at the end of the day, I can kind of see why it was kept the same just because of the structure and the nature of how these missions work. Where Ocarina of Time, with its gameplay and world, it's way bigger in scope. There's so much more to this game. You're freely running and exploring dungeons, temples, towns, and villages all over this great map of Hyrule, so the game's already naturally a lot different. Even if they did just upgrade the graphics and completely change assets of some of the world, it would still feel different running and interacting with it. But even with that said, I still think this remake is going to be more than just a graphical thing. For one, Nintendo didn't even show this thing. For Star Fox, they announced it a month ago, and we have the game today. Also remember, they announced it quickly via a random Twitter drop and said, hey, there's a Star Fox Direct coming out in 15 minutes, get ready. This was not the same case. This was revealed as the last big thing of the recent summer Nintendo Direct, and also they only gave us a quick glimpse and a release date of 2026. They're really hiding this thing for a reason. Also, we have no clue who's working on this game. This could be something that's given off to another company like Villain Studios was for Star Fox, but this could also just be internal Nintendo. In fact, we really don't have much of anything that internal Nintendo has worked on with the Switch 2 so far, besides Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. Besides those two games, it's been different studios helping Nintendo along the way. And we know Intelligent Systems is probably working on Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which leads nothing but Splatoon Raiders. And that's a spin-off, so that could even be a different studio. We don't know yet, but I think Splatoon Raiders is probably internal Nintendo, which would only give us one Switch 2 game that internal Nintendo is working on this year. So a part of me really does believe that Nintendo themselves could be working on this remake, which means they could make it as ambitious as they possibly wanted to. Not to mention, this game is also the big holiday title. Nintendo does not have a big holiday title right now. In fact, they don't really even have a huge AAA game for this year at all so far. So this to me has to be more than just another remake, especially with Star Fox already being a one-to-one remake. This would be the second one-to-one remake within a 6-month time span, and this would be not only just another one-to-one remake, but one that's your big holiday game for your second year of Switch 2 when you haven't really had a big AAA game since what, Donkey Kong Bonanza? So yes, even with Star Fox kind of looking like this game could just be the exact same game again, I would just be completely shocked if it was. I feel like Nintendo has to come out swinging with this game. Also, I think Star Fox slightly gets a pass because it's Star Fox. This is a series that's been struggling to get its footing pretty much since Star Fox 64. I mean, there's a reason why Nintendo keeps trying to essentially remake this game with things like Star Fox Zero and now Star Fox 64 again. Like right now, it feels like they're trying to completely soft reboot the franchise and get this game to connect with a new audience, and trying to get it popular by remaking what is the epitome of the perfect Star Fox game so far. Zelda doesn't need this treatment. This is not a game that needs to, make sure it lets everybody know that it could be a big franchise one day. Zelda is already a big franchise. It's one of Nintendo's most beloved franchises, so it doesn't have anything it needs to prove here. It just needs to be a really fun new remake. So let me tell you right now, there's a reason why Nintendo hasn't shown us anything yet. If this was just another one-to-one recreation, I feel like it would have been another Star Fox situation, where they would have just randomly announced it on Twitter or something, or even in the Direct, and showed us a big trailer so far and said the game's coming out in a couple of months. They didn't even give us a release date for a game that's coming out this year, and it was the beginning of June when this thing was announced. Like, that's very strange, and I feel like it was all done for a reason. And with this being Zelda's 40th anniversary, I really feel like Nintendo's gonna push this game to its limits. And also the fact that the movie, or at least a Zelda movie, is coming out at the beginning of next year, this game has a lot riding on it. Now, are they actually gonna add massive gameplay changes like new dungeons and completely new towns and areas? Maybe not, but at the same time, I would really like to see completely revamped things like parts of dungeons and bosses, because the bosses in this game are pretty lackluster. That's something that desperately needs to change. And I would at the very least naturally expect Hyrule Field to be a little bit more interesting and filled out, but that's just me. But I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. I truly think Nintendo's going to go a little bit more ambitious, or maybe even a lot more ambitious than what they did with Star Fox. I don't think it's going to be a one-to-one recreation, but I could be wrong. Let me know what you're thinking down below. Make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Zelda and Nintendo in general, and I hope you all have a blessed rest of your day. See you guys.